Welcome back to another edition of Cover One, the Film Room. I'm your host, Erik Turner, and I'm joined today by Nate Geary. As always, Nate, what's going on, brother?
Nothing, man. Excited to finally be back breaking down some film. It seems like it's been a while. I know this time last year we were breaking down Nathan Peterman. So
Yeah, and I flashed back to some of their stats and some of their film last year, and it kind of worried me. But it was a good thing, that flashback of breaking down film of Nathan Peterman and A.J. McCarron and even Josh Allen against these Panthers in the first preseason game last year kind of tempered my expectations. But as always, what we're going to do is we're going to examine this film from the Panthers game and show you, some of the X's and O's and how Josh Allen's progressing because, although the offense and defensive schemes and concepts are very vanilla, there is still stuff we can draw from, right, Nate?
absolutely, and you start to look at some of the numbers here that pop off the screen to you, and one of the things that I think I take away, and I know you do too, is the focus on the short to intermediate passing game, and what that reason is for is I'm thinking they really want to get as many reps with Josh and Cole Beasley in game situations as possible. I think that's why there's probably been sort of a scripted thought process there of let's get Cole Beasley included in on these early games as much as possible, considering they've really only had this relationship developing for about 3 weeks.
Yeah, no doubt. 15 for 21 in the preseason for 168 yards so far. He's only played a few drives, but as you mentioned, 11 for 13 in the short area from 0 to 9 yards. It's obviously a focus. It's something that they want to put on film. They want to get him some reps in with his new weapons, especially Cole Beasley, of course. We're going to cover enough of his film today and this year. I think he's someone that's obviously stood out in camp, and it's translating to the game. And what are your thoughts with his rapport with Josh Allen right now?
Yeah, there's definitely a very interesting what I think situation playing out offensively. I mean, you look at the tight end position, Tommy Sweeney appears to have that chemistry. The good thing is what you look for with quarterbacks is you want your quarterback to make the players around him better. And right now it looks like Cole Beasley could be in store for like a career season. Just based on what we're watching in the preseason. And again, that goes without saying that John Brown hasn't really made the impact yet in a game situation that I think a lot of people are excited to see him. I know I am. I mean, when you start to talk about how you beat defenses, it's having a threat both downfield and underneath, and they have that in both those two players. But Tommy Sweeney has showed a really nice rapport. I thought he had a tough game in the first preseason game, but really bounced back in a big way this week against Carolina. I thought he had a tough week of practice as well for Tommy Sweeney, as being reported by some of the beat guys. But I thought Tommy in particular made a couple of really nice grabs. He's not, a guy that's going to wow you with height and athleticism. He's 6'4", 250, but he's not going to be a guy that, burns you on 4.5, 4.6 speed. But what he makes up for is really good hands, and that was kind of on display over the weekend.
Right, and where the tight ends all together, those big 6'4", 6'5", 250-pound guys are going to help Josh Allen is, as we saw in the Panthers game, down the seam, but also in the intermediate area. So far with Tommy Sweeney, 3 of his targets are from that 10 to 19-yard range, so he's usually that intermediate guy, but he's a big target, so Josh Allen can hit him. And if Josh needs to throw it a little high to get it up over the linebackers, he has guys like Tommy Sweeney and Dawson Knox hopefully coming back. So those tight ends are definitely going to take the place of those big target wide receivers that we had last year outside. They're going to start using them from maybe the numbers in to the middle of the field and in that intermediate area. So with that said, let's go ahead and jump to the Panthers game, Nate. I want to get your thoughts on Josh Allen in that Panthers game. Of course, he was 9 for 11 for 102 yards. So what were your overall thoughts on his play in that game?
Yeah, I thought they came out again the same way they came out in the first preseason game. They wanted to make a commitment to the passing game early, and it was on display, and especially that short and intermediate passing game. But I think there was kind of a common thought or a common theme going into the game that this was going to be Cole Beasley's game, and the defense really dictated that. It wasn't even maybe a game plan where Brian Daboll goes in this game thinking, let's throw the ball 5 times out of the 11 attempts that we start with right to Cole Beasley. I think that they came out and in some of the formations that they came out in were indicative of what they were doing, because in almost all situations, Cole Beasley had a linebacker right over the top of him. And anytime you're going to get that situation pre-snap for Josh Allen, I think you're thinking in your head, unless they bring a safety down to try to rob this, this is what I need this is the guy I got to throw to on this particular play. Anytime you get that matchup. So we talked a little about Tommy Sweeney too, and if Tommy Sweeney can enjoy a couple of undergrad classes at the Cole Beasley route running school, I think that they're going to have something there underneath.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And yes, Cole Beasley was the primary target on a lot of Josh Allen's throws, and rightfully so. We want them to build their chemistry, especially in that short area. And there are going to be times where Allen's going to be in trouble, and the first guy he's going to look to is Cole Beasley. And having a guy like Cole that can play in the slot there, and as you said, they can dial up some formations to get him matched up versus linebackers. And you got to think about this: if they're in an empty formation, a 3-by-2 formation or a 3-by-1 formation, and Cole Beasley's in the slot, just because the defense is in zone coverage doesn't mean that Cole Beasley in the slot is not going to be matched up. Right. Technically against a linebacker, and that's what the defense have to start thinking about now with the Bills. The Bills didn't really have that last year, so even though it's zone coverage, you can still dial up formations that gets Beasley one-on-one versus a linebacker in space. Sure. And we saw this against the Panthers. Panthers came out in a lot of pattern matching coverage. Well, guess what? Depending on the route combinations, you're going to get the linebacker matched up on Cole Beasley, and Dable had scripted it perfectly, and that's why you saw Beasley get wide open a lot. And yes, don't get me wrong, Luke Kuechly wasn't there, and Luke Kuechly probably, prevented maybe half of those passes of being thrown, but there aren't a lot of Luke Kuechlys in the league either, so don't give me that. He's an elite player, so yes, he wasn't there, but more times than not, Beasley is going to win the high percentage of those matchups when he's matched up versus a linebacker.
Yeah, and in those 3-by-1 sets, or just the 3-by sets to the field, the thing that you look for is basically what the Bills were doing was using Carolina's technique against them. What they are being coached to do the right way, the Bills were able to take advantage of it, because what ends up happening is that linebacker has to split the difference between the last offensive player on the line of scrimmage and Cole Beasley. He doesn't want to be exactly over the top of Beasley. He wants to maintain that zone integrity. So when he's there, Cole Beasley's, licking his lips right there, right? I mean, he's thinking to himself, man, this guy's got inside leverage on me. All I have to do is put one move on the inside and get to the out, or vice versa. And there's not going to be much you can do. And when we get to some of these Cole Beasley plays, they're going to see, Cole Beasley use the defensive technique against themselves, but him himself using his technique to beat defenders, and some of the stuff that he does is really sort of next level nuanced stuff, and I'm excited to break down some of his plays.
With that being said, let's go ahead and just jump into the film. All right, Nate, so on to the first play of the game. It's 1st and 10, the ball's on the right hash, and the Bills come out for the first two plays. They come out in 12 personnel, which I love. It's a personnel that you can obviously run out of, but you also can pass out of if you have good enough tight ends. Now, the Bills are only going to send out 3 guys into a route here, and if there's one play or 2 plays that I didn't like from Allen, it's early in the game, and it's this first throw to Beasley here in the slot, who's matched up with the safety, and the reason being is he was inaccurate. The placement was bad, right? The placement should have been to the front pad, as he mentioned to start off his post-game presser, because if he hits that front pad, Nate, I mean, there's a pretty good chance that Beasley's going to scoop that up, and he's going to have one-on-one into the middle of the field versus Eric Reed. He could very well score from that part of the field, couldn't he, Nate?
Very easily. And, I kind of equate this to the game of golf. I golf a lot, right?
Yep.
I usually say, or this is pretty common things that happen on the golf course. Your very first tee shot, especially if you don't get to warm up before, you call it a breakfast ball, right? Like, it's your first shot of the day. There's a really good chance you're going to hit a worm burner. You're going to top it, and it's going to go nowhere, and you're going to end up shanking it.
Right.
Sort of what we've seen the first 2 weeks of the preseason is the very first play. Josh Allen comes out. He's got all the jitters inside. He's got all that energy, and he kind of misplaces the football. The first time in the first game against the Colts, it ended up being incompletion. In this particular instance, he was able to keep it within the grasp of Cole Beasley, and Cole Beasley makes a nice play to come back to the football and make a catch and make a play for his quarterback.
Right.
But as you mentioned, I mean, if he leads him the right way, and I think what you like to see in this game too is I think this is a good example of the ball coming out of Josh Allen's hands before Cole Beasley is fully into his break. And quite honestly, Trey Boston might as well be a linebacker in this instance. There's going to be safeties that are big time mismatches for Cole Beasley, and Trey Boston's definitely one of them for me.
Yeah, no doubt. And, it's something that we've noticed the first 2 games here in 2019 is that he starts off a little shaky. Like you said, last week it was that Zay Jones pass that he was trying to aim small and he missed small. That's fine. same thing here. You'd like to see him lead him into the field. And I think that speaks to how important Brian Daboll's script is. His first 10, 15, 20 plays is to Josh Allen's play, and getting him on the field early, getting him in rhythm early, and getting those nerves out. In the script portion of the game, Josh Allen's been pretty good under Brian Daboll, and that's part of why Brian Daboll was hired, in scripting the plays and game planning plays to his player strengths. And so, this game, it's a little different. They're not really game planning, coming into preseason game. Probably see a little more this week to kind of get the reps going and get that muscle memory going as far as game planning goes. But this is one of those plays, he just let it rip, and you would just like to see him lead him to the field so that Cole Beasley could go ahead and get yards after the catch, which is something he can do if given a proper placed ball.
Well, you saw Mitchell Trubisky in year 2, and in your talk about the script, those first 15 plays, that's where, I think Mitchell Trubisky did a pretty significant amount of his damage in his second season, his rookie season, where he ends up with 3,800 yards, 25 touchdowns. He did most of that damage in the first 15 plays of the game, where he was rendered pretty irrelevant for the rest of the game because of that. And that's just going to be young quarterback. So I'm really interested to see this preseason game coming up this week, because it forces the team to get out of script a little bit. The offense is going to play into the second and potentially third quarter, and that's going to force you to sort of play outside the script, and that's where I'm most interested in evaluating Josh Allen going forward this season too.
Definitely. So with that play out of the way, that's one of the bad plays he had. Again, he went 9 for 11, so there's not too much negative to talk about in Josh Allen's game, this one, but this was one of them, and it's something to learn from. And again, as they get more and more reps together, who knows, maybe he leads them up the field, and Cole Beasley can score and really kick off this game like the Bills really wanted to. With that said, let's jump into the second play. All right, on to play 2. The Bills are faced with a 1st and 10 situation. They have 21 personnel on the field. The ball is just inside the left hash. And, of course, it's first down. The Panthers are thinking, hey, run's coming. They got 5 on the line of scrimmage. And it's one of those plays with a nasty alignment with Zay Jones tighter to the tight end there. So, this screams run. You're trying to get that receiver in the box to help out with the blocking. But, of course, the Bills call up a scissors concept where Tommy Sweeney is going to run a flag route to the corner. You're going to have Zay Jones basically running a post, and you're going to have the fullback leaking out into the flat. So it's a really nice concept to run versus this man coverage. And, again, you got a stacked box. You got to be able to throw some play action out there and push the ball down the field, or at least get an efficient pass. And, this is one of Josh Allen's prettiest throws, Nate. I'm sure you agree with it. He turns his back to the defense, and then the timing, the rhythm, he gets to the top of his drop, and he just feathers it up over the top of the linebacker to Tommy Sweeney.
One hitch, balls out, and I love that, and I think you have to have that in this situation. If you look at the timing, Tommy Sweeney's toe tap, walk out of bounds. Yeah. That to me shows a really great understanding of timing on this route. But I think right here, basically when he hits that first back step, I think he knows where he's going with the football, and all that hitch step does is allows him to get in a better position to place that ball in just an absolutely, you mentioned a beautiful trajectory, but just a beautiful spot in general. This is one of the best 20-ish yard throws that I've seen Josh Allen make in his career. Obviously only 11 games on NFL film and a couple of preseason games, but if you go back to college, you didn't see these types of sort of feathered in throws. Right. This thing right here is on a string, and it's really, really impressive. And I sort of imagine, a Kean Fahey or someone who's going to look at a play like this and try to find a negative and say well, Josh, he didn't hold the play action long enough, but
something.
Right. But on this play, I love the formation. It puts the defense in a bind. They've got 8 in the box. It looks like a run formation. He starts, as you mentioned, with the back to the defense, but I just love the timing of it. One hitch and throw the football. He knows where he's going with this thing at the snap. Yeah,
I like the footwork because those little gather steps after he hits the top of his drop, that little hitch that you reference, it gets his base, tighter, because when you're hitting that back foot, you're gonna have a wide base, so you gotta get your feet under him, especially Josh Allen. So it was nice, and the timing, and the taking a little speed off the ball here. that takes your delivery is a little longer. And if you look at these edge rushers are closing in, and Josh Allen is not phased by those edge rushers. Honestly, if he held it for another half a second, he may be getting sacked. He may be getting that ball stripped by the edge rusher that's coming off of 4. But you know what? The timing was there. He let it rip and dropped it in a bucket to Sweeney. We're going to see it here from another angle. And it just really a really nice play because, this man coverage is really putting a stress on these two backers here. You got an outside linebacker who in college was a defensive end, basically. You have a middle linebacker here, and they are responsible for Sweeney and DeMarco, number 2 and number 3. And the way that drops is outside linebackers taking DeMarco, and you're going to see just a slight delay by this linebacker and who he's supposed to take. And it gives Sweeney just enough time to get him out of phase. And then Allen leads him to the sideline as that linebacker is trying to get back in phase. And the location is just, it can't be any better. It's right in his hands, basket catchable ball. He didn't rifle it like you saw him do a lot of times in college. He dropped it in there, and obviously Sweeney, he had a drop last week, I believe, was against the Colts. This one was a catchable ball, got him into the game early, right, Nate?
Yeah, and that's what, and you see it on the next drive too when he makes another really, really great catch. But again, I think what this shows too is like on this particular route, it can't be flat. And what I mean by that is you can't have the receiver be forced to the sidelines. It needs to continue on that quote unquote corner. What you say here is this route is really meant to go to the front pylon. So on this, if this ball is flat, the defender has an opportunity to swat it away. Instead, he literally comes over the top perfectly. It's aimed right at that front pylon. It's exactly what you want in terms of ball placement because the defender really is rendered useless. I think the defender actually does a good job of catching up to Sweeney to cut the angle off, but the throw, again, beats perfect defense in my opinion.
Yeah,
and near perfect defense. It's not perfect. He's not in a great position. Sweeney ends up creating about 3 or 4 yards of separation midway through his route. But when you look at it from kind of this angle towards the end, he ends up kind of closing the gap on Sweeney, and he ends up being right in his hip pocket right as the ball is delivered, but it's in such a perfect spot, it doesn't matter.
I hate to bring it up, but this is very reminiscent of the Tyrod Taylor Zay Jones incompletion at the end of the game a couple of years ago. This versus this very same team versus the very same route concept. It's up to the quarterback to throw this guy open. If this guy's in his hip pocket, if he has to throw him open. So sometimes you're going to have to lead him to the sideline a little more, a little flatter ball. Sometimes you're going to have to lead him down the field a little more. Obviously, back a couple of years ago, Tyrod Taylor, Zay Jones weren't on the same page. All went incomplete. This one, Josh Allen and Sweeney were on the same page, and the ball was delivered properly. Very catchable ball. And this is what happens when you guys, you're getting those reps. Sweeney's got a lot of reps this offseason with Josh Allen, and it's obviously starting to show up. And so I would like to see him a little more in this game versus Detroit because he's obviously standing out.
I'd really like to see Dawson Knox too, because I think this is a route that's just tailor-made for a Dawson Knox, especially with his ability to sort of run away from defenders. If this is Knox, I assume that 4 or 5 yard cushion that he gets halfway through his route doesn't really get tightened in, or hemmed in. So, I'm really interested to see once they can get healthy at that position. And I think Tommy Sweeney appropriately kind of slides down to tight end 3 or 4, that they've actually got some really decent receiving weapons at the tight end position.
Definitely. With that said, let's go ahead and jump into the third play of this breakdown. All right, Nate, the next play, the Bills are faced with a 2nd and 10 situation. Ball's on the right hash. The Bills are in 11 personnel, and they're motioning Cole Beasley to the bottom of the screen. And this is a minor thing, but it's something to take notice because they're going to use this a lot. They're going to motion Beasley into stack sets. And what this motion and this stack set does is it forces this corner that's on Roberts to back off and Dante Jackson. So they get a little more cushion. And then when the ball is snapped, you're going to see Allen go ahead sidearm it to Beasley, but you'll see it just gives that locker a better angle versus that DB. Obviously, Dante Jackson's outside. He's got to maintain outside leverage, and then you see all the offensive linemen coming to set the alley and give Beasley a lane to get upfield, and Beasley gets a good chunk of the yardage here. All right, Nate, so we're looking at the tight angle. I want you to go ahead and tell me what you think about this pass from Josh Allen. Obviously, something he's struggled with in college. He struggled with a little bit last year, throwing screen passes to his receivers out to his left, out to his right. This is something we saw in camp a little bit. It's something we also saw last year, as I mentioned off the air to you. They threw this little screen out to Ray McCloud to his, I think it was to Allen's right, early in the game against Minnesota last year. But what type of progress has he made in this area?
Well, I think, and what you're going to see here too, when this play goes live, is just the arm angle that Allen's able to deliver this from, which is Patrick Mahomes, Aaron Rodgers-esque. That's what those guys make a living doing. And I think what you're seeing too, and I think what you'll notice are trends, right? And now that we've got 11 NFL games, including some preseason games of film of Josh Allen, we're starting to see some trends on these particular throws. And I think one of the things is what you're going to see is right now, naturally, Josh Allen's going to have a better time, more accuracy on the throws to the left side of the field than the right side. And one of the reasons is in these RPO situations or play action from shotgun, that running back coming from the left side over to the right side in that play action actually allows Josh to make the play fake. And based on just the momentum of the play fake, it actually loads Josh Allen into a throwing position, opposed to the right side, where if he actually is letting the running back come from his right to his left in a play action, Josh Allen is bringing the ball to the right to his left hip and has to bring it back up, then load it and throw. So what this is doing on the left side is it's all one fluid motion, and you're seeing how comfortable he is with it. His shoulders are in the right position. The momentum of Devin Singletary on this play basically puts the ball in a position where Josh Allen's ready to throw right now. When it's the other side, that ball is at his left hip, not right there. So you see in a situation like this, his mechanics really set up well on the left side. And that goes for all right-handed throwing quarterbacks. The difference is the technique breaks down a little bit, in my opinion, when he's forced to sort of reload the football. So on plays like this to the left side, I think you've seen pretty impressive improvement from year one to year two just in throws like this. But I also think they have the personnel to run things like this and have practiced it more. And I think one of the other advantages he's having too is all the first team reps and second team reps he gets in practice, and they're practicing these types of throws. They're practicing these types of throws in one-on-one segments. So the more reps he's going to get at this, the better. And I think things like this, plays like this, is a real testament to Jordan Palmer.
Yeah, no doubt. Jordan Palmer, obviously the new quarterbacks coach, Ken Dorsey. I mean, just from a mechanical standpoint, as you said, those are great points, because you're right. When that play action is that play fake is coming from the left to right, it does naturally load them on these. And you see most of these screens, especially when we were at camp, you saw a lot of the screens going to the left. Now, he's going to have to show he can do it to his right. But the mechanics were on point here. You see him set that hallway, that arch or that midfoot has to be pointed at the target. Even more importantly is watch this lead foot. That lead foot, he cannot open it too much. He needs to have it just, basically you want that inside of your foot pointing just inside that target. And I mean, look at that. That's beautiful. And that's why that target, that pass is right on. And it's eye level where Beasley can look it in and then get his eyes up and just turn and get his eyes up and get upfield. So, I mean, those are great points about his mechanics on this play. And again, it's something we're gonna have to see him do it to his right a little more. But I mean, if we can add these type of plays into the arsenal, it's one of those things that it becomes an extension of your run game. And it's something that the Bills didn't have last year. They were bottom 5 in screens called last year. And they were, again, bottom 5 in wide receiver screen called last year. So if they can add this to the playbook, it's only going to help, obviously, Josh Allen's completion percentage, but it'll obviously help the offense, add another portion of the playbook that the defense has to defend.
I'm really excited to see a John Brown in this position, and getting the ball in his hands right away and allowing his blocks to develop. That's not a knock against Cole Beasley. I just don't think in an ideal world that Cole Beasley's taken this, and there's an option or a possibility that he potentially takes this to the house. John Brown, Isaiah McKenzie, those two get their hands on this kind of play. You don't know, and you see it later in the game with Isaiah McKenzie in his only snap of the football game. Almost houses one on a very similar play, but what he was able to show was just an incredible amount of patience to allow his blocks to develop.
Yes.
I think the Bills have a couple really nice players in that aspect that can get the ball in their hands, allow the blocks to develop, and a guy that can take it to the house.
Yeah, no doubt. And, they will try to run some of these screens with John Brown. But the thing that I remember watching John Brown's film this past offseason was when he was with Carson Palmer, what him and Arians and Palmer did was if, the defenses, as we saw in the last play, you want to stack the box, they want to do one-on-one outside, whether it's man or zone, And if they're playing off and soft because they're respecting that coverage, they just run a smoke route, which is all he does is Allen looks over, gives him a little signal, and John Brown on the snap turns and Josh Allen throws to him. We saw it, a couple times last year, but that's an area that Josh Allen has to prove that he can hit that throw, get his feet around real quick. You want to see John Brown, as you said, get the ball now, and you want to see him take off. So that's something that they will most definitely attempt this year. And I'm glad you brought that up with John Brown, because we haven't really seen too much of him this preseason. All right, on to the next play. The Bills come out in an empty set, and they're going to put Cole Beasley to the top of the screen in the slot, just inside Tommy Sweeney. And one thing I want to talk about, Nate, real quick, is how Daboll's in his second year now. He knows the weapons he has. He knows the quarterback he has. So the staff, with him, Ken Dorsey, and the whole offensive staff, they had an offseason to maybe go back and figure out, obviously, what Josh Allen does well, but also what the incoming pieces have done well, whether they're coming, out of the draft or signed through free agency like Cole Beasley. And, this is one of those routes here. He's matched up versus that linebacker, and he shakes him. And he shakes him, and it's 2nd 11. It puts the Bills in a good third down situation. And it's something that we talked about at the top of the show, is getting Beasley matched up versus linebackers. And as I'd mentioned, this is technically not man coverage. This is actually a pattern matching coverage where both of these defenders right here, Nate, are pattern matching these two receivers here. Now, say hypothetically, if both of these receivers were to run out routes here or some kind of stick route here, what would happen is you're going to have a trap coverage. You're going to have this corner trapping that out route, and then this defender right here, the second defender in the slot here, he would jump that second out route by Beasley. But the Bills go ahead and flip the script here. So instead of running two, out routes, you're going to have Sweeney running and, kind of like a bender route over the middle. So it's like a little high-low. But this is simply Cole Beasley running, an in-breaking route, a crossing route, but he's so nuanced that he knows how to set up these defenders. He knows how to attack their leverage and to get open. So he's not just running full speed, across the middle to get open. He is setting this guy up with his nuance and his route running, and I know it's something that you want to talk about.
Yeah, and one of the things I love about this play from a quarterback and from a wide receiver standpoint is once he crosses the middle linebacker, once he crosses 56's face, the thing that I love about this play, and you'll see it again later in one of the plays, is that his ability, once he crosses his face, he automatically gets vertical, and the ball's leading him there, much unlike the very first play of the game where Josh Allen throws that ball behind him. This is perfectly located that allows Cole Beasley to get vertical once the ball is in his hands. And that's a huge aspect to this play being successful. But more importantly, look at the down and distance right now, 2nd and 11. An incompletion here likely puts them in a situation on 3rd and 11 inside the 20-yard line in the red zone where, yes, they do end up settling for a field goal here. But what ends up happening is they're in a 3rd and 6 situation, a 3rd and 5 situation instead of 3rd and 11. And on 2nd and long, there aren't going to be a ton of situations where you're running the football on 2nd and long. You want here to get half back. And I think teams that are bad on 3rd down are also bad on 2nd and long situations. And this is a really good example of if you're a team that wants to take that step forward and be a team that runs 70 plays a game, and not a team that, it leads the league or is the lowest in the league in first half first downs like the Bills were last year. A lot of that stems from their inability or incapability of getting any yardage on 2nd and long to put themselves in 3rd and manageable situations. So I love that about this play.
That's a great point, Nate. And, I went back and looked at Football Outsiders DVOA based on down and distance, and the Bills were ranked 29th in 2nd and long situations. Well, when they were 3rd and short, they were ranked 11th. So it is crucial. Whether that happens on 1st down or 2nd down, you have to get to 3rd and manageable. And, this is a 2nd and 11 play. They're behind the chains. This is what they call, a get back on track, type of play. So if they're going to pass it here, this has to be, as you said, you got to chop it in half. And this is, it may look like an easy play, but this is an important play. Because having a guy like Beasley that can, uncover and get you half that yardage back, get that 5 or 6 yards to set up a manageable 3rd down is crucial to Josh Allen's development, because you can't just have him in 3rd and 11, running around when, teams are probably going to start blitzing him a little more this year. And so he's going to have to make decisions a lot quicker. So you got to have you got to put the offense back on track, but you got to put the offense and Josh Allen in a advantageous situation. Having a guy like Cole Beasley, get you half of those yards back on 2nd and 11 is absolutely important this year.
I think last year one, Josh Allen probably tries to make that throw to Tommy Sweeney. And, it's not that it would have been a bad decision. I just think that instead of forcing a window throw right here where the ball likely is going to have to be behind Sweeney. So it's going to have to be a particularly accurate football because Eric Reid, although he's not in the picture here, comes in the picture very quickly. So if this ball is released, Eric Reid's going to have essentially a streamline to knocking Tommy Sweeney out cold in the situation. So I think year one, Josh Allen tries to make this throw. Year two, Josh Allen lets the route develop and actually leads the receiver as he's making this route back into the inside. So that's what I really like is the patience to let this play develop and not just take the very first window that he saw.
I mean, this is the type of development that we wanted to see from Josh Allen. As you said, not throwing for the sticks on 2nd and 11, understanding the down and distance, the situation, the matchup, more importantly. And, if he does throw that to Sweeney, it's going to be a tighter window. It could get him knocked out. He'd have to aim small and hopefully miss small over the middle of the field. That's quite the challenge. If he's off, if he's inaccurate, he doesn't place it properly, who knows where the ball ends up. It could end up in the Panthers' hands. So this is a, good understanding, as you said, of, the down and distance and getting it to the matchup that can get you in a manageable 3rd down situation. And just a nice play by Josh Allen. And, I threw this clip in here because it's kind of similar. It's similar to what they ran here. You'll see the tight end, though, this time is actually inside of Cole Beasley. So, but it's the same situation. You'll see it from the tight camera angle. You're having Beasley running a crossing route, but he's nuanced, man. He's not just going to run full speed across the middle to give that middle linebacker a beat on the ball. What he does is he sets him up. He sets him up to think, oh, maybe I'm going to go in behind you. I'm using my eyes to hold you. And, it's just a good job of, boom, he's bursting away from that linebacker in the middle of the field. This formation, these 3x1s, these 3x2s are going to open up the middle of the field. And when you have a nuanced route runner like Cole Beasley, he's going to separate and he's going to help the quarterback. If the ball's not perfect, if he has a separation, there's more margin, margin for error is larger so that Cole Beasley can make a play, and if that ball is not placed perfectly. So with that said, let's go ahead and jump into the next play. All right, Nate, the next play is very similar to the last one we just broke down, another 2nd and long play. So Spain, I think, is the one that got called for holding on the prior play. So the Bills see 2nd and 18. The ball's on the left hash. And again, this is a play that is, going to determine, obviously, 3rd down and the play call on 3rd down, but it's to get the offense back on track. They need to get some positive yardage here to get the offense in something manageable for 3rd down. Again, they send out an empty set, empty protection. You can't see him, but there is a running back to the bottom of the screen. The Panthers are in basically a too high safety set. And so we're going to, again, get Beasley matched up with a linebacker here. The very same coverage, the very same route concept, the very same linebacker. And Beasley, it doesn't matter. He's still going to get open. And he does almost a similar move, but that linebacker, having seen it already, just can't stick with him, right? I mean, it's crazy.
Well, he's flat-footed. I mean, what are you doing on your heels in that situation?
He's on his heels because you see the crossover here, the Stevie Johnson crossover here, that puts him his base too wide, and he can't burst like Cole Beasley. Not many linebackers can if they're matched up in this situation. But obviously, the throw from Allen is on point, and we'll get to that. But got to give some kudos, some credit to this offensive line. I mean, if you look here, I mean, the middle of the field it's clear. There's no defenders, there's no defensive tackles in Josh Allen's line of sight. And so this is just a pitch and catch. He's comfortable in the pocket here. The edge rushers are downfield, and he has a good look at Cole Beasley, so he places it perfect. And you'll see Beasley frame it. And of course, as you mentioned earlier, what happens then as soon as he catches it?
I mean, right upfield. Like there isn't a wasted motion here. And honestly, he begins that upfield motion really sort of once he makes that first step outside of the face. Right there, boom.
Yep.
First step, he's going upfield, and Josh Allen leads him there. And the thing that you love to see about this, again, 2nd and 18. 3rd and 18, you might as well just quick kick. You might as well punt it. There's very rare very few times you're going to convert on a 3rd and 18 situation, especially with the field goal being near field goal position. So even if you don't end up doing anything on 3rd down, you've at least put yourself in an area of the field where your kicker can bail you out with 3 points. But this ends up being a scoring drive, and this is a big play that helps that. You mentioned it, 29th and 2nd down and long situations.
Yeah.
Before they were just technicians on 2nd and long. In this one, that's a good thing to see.
Yeah, and again, we talked about how this is the same concept, same matchup, coverage, all that. But you'll see Beasley and the offensive learn from their last few drive, or from the last drive in the prior play, is Beasley knows once he gets past this guy, he's got green, because they are running a bender route right here in the slot, and it's going to occupy that linebacker. So he knows, and you can kind of see him peeking over there. You can see him. He's got green because of that vacated area, and that's why he is able to turn upfield. And as you mentioned, 2nd 18, 14-yard gain on an easy, one-on-one matchup to the middle of the field. This is setting your offense up for success, right? This is one of those plays that we didn't see this last year. As good as Zay Jones, a year as Zay Jones had last year, he wasn't doing stuff like this. As good as McKenzie looked in the slot and on those option routes the last quarter of the season last year, he wasn't doing stuff like this. He doesn't have the type of intelligence that Cole Beasley has, or the moxie, or the nuance in his route running that we see on a play like this.
Yeah, and the thing that you love, though, and that you love to see too, is these guys downfield blocking. In a situation like this, that needs to be something that you buy in as guys on the roster, right? Like, you got to buy into the fact that now it's my job to help my guy get as many yards as possible. You see Zay Jones immediately engaging in a man-on-man block, and you'll love to see that in a situation like this, because he almost puts them in a situation where they convert a 1st down on 2nd and 18. That's huge. They're in a 3rd and 2 situation, 3rd and 3. Again, a young quarterback, that's the situations you want to be putting him in.
Hands down, man. Good point on Zay Jones there, because although he's not getting maybe the targets or looks, he's not the 1st or 2nd read in a lot of these passes anymore. He's gonna have to do little things like that to stand out, and maybe he is not the go-to guy on those 3rd down situations, but little things like this can definitely help his game and the offense overall. All right, Nate, the last play of this breakdown is a really good one. It's a 3rd and 4 situation. The Bills have a short field here. I believe it was pretty much right after a nice return by Andre Roberts, who's in the slot to the top of the screen. The Bills send out 11 personnel. They have 3 to the top of the screen. They have what we call a nub set to the bottom of the screen with the tight end on the line of scrimmage. But you also got to take a look at LaShawn McCoy. Look where his alignment is. All right, he's basically outside the tackle box right now. He's just outside the tackle box, screaming to us, if you're watching at home, that he's probably going out into a route. All right, and he absolutely does. And what you're going to see here is the Bills are sending out an empty protection scheme here, empty pass protection, where they only have 5 guys to block up the 6 guys that are showing on the defensive side of the field, right? Because Nate, both of these linebackers are showing in the A gaps, what we call double mugging the A. So if there's only 5 guys versus 6, Josh Allen has to be on top of his game and calling out who the mic is, but also calling out who the hot route is. And to start this play, you see Josh Allen here pointing out, to the top of the screen, that the hot route basically is going to come to the top of the screen. So if they're bringing 6, you're going to have basically Cole Beasley, the hot route here. So he's going to have to do something to get open now with that safety over the top here. If that 6-man blitz does come, but what happens here is he realizes, no, that's not going to happen. What's going to happen is I'm going to change the protection here, and we're gonna put it to the bottom of the screen. And when the ball snapped, only 4 guys come, so they're in a good position here. And what the offense is sending now, that the protection is set prior to the snap, they're sending Sweeney down the seam, right? They're sending him down the seam. Mm-hmm. They're having McCoy just leak out here. And this is good versus cover 3, which is what the defense is in. And I'll let it play so you can see it all drop in. So you're going to have your deep third. Of course, you got a safety middle of the field. Now, these are all 4 under defenders, and which means this linebacker's got to get all the way out to the flats. This means that Dante Jackson, the corner right here to the bottom of the screen, is caught in a bind. He sees Shady leaking out, and then maybe he picked up on the lineman of Shady, maybe he didn't. But either way, you got to respect Shady a little bit in this third and medium situation. He holds just enough to get Sweeney down the seam, and then I'll have you talk about the throw here in a second. And it's something that Josh Allen didn't do a lot of last year, is touch throws down the seam. But again, he hits the rookie down the seam in front of the safety, and the Bills are in business inside the 5.
Yeah, he knew where he was going with the football. You could look. I mean, he was looking left the whole way. Immediately, and all he was waiting for was Tommy Sweeney to cross the face of that linebacker trying to get to the flat. That's the immediate threat defender on this play. Even though he's not covering Sweeney or not technically in Sweeney's zone, what he's waiting for is 1, 2, 3 steps from that linebacker. That linebacker crosses the backside of Tommy Sweeney right here. Josh Allen knows where he's going with the football. Yeah. And if you look, that ball is coming out right as Tommy Sweeney's making his. Tommy Sweeney hasn't turned around yet, and Josh Allen's in the process of throwing him the football. That, to me, is a huge, huge indicator of growth in the areas that we really wanted to see growth from in Josh Allen. Throws with anticipation. But the pre-snap stuff, to me, is more impressive than the throw, which, I mean, this is, again, his second best throw of the game. Does he not make that earlier throw to Sweeney? This is the best throw. So, really, his best 2 throws of the game go to the rookie tight end. But in this particular instance, what I love, if you highlight up at the top of the screen at the start of this play, is the play clock. There's 12 seconds for the second-year quarterback playing in his second preseason game as a full-time starter and only his 11 true games of NFL action. Yeah. And what he's able to do in 12 seconds is essentially check 2 times on the play. Basically understanding like, hey, Cole, I need you to get in this position for a hot route, but then realizes and knows what the defense is doing before the defense does it. And to me, that's a huge step forward for Josh Allen, understanding what the defense is doing. And that second check at 9 seconds, he made 2 checks in 3 seconds. To me, like that is a great sign for your young signal caller.
Yeah, no doubt. You know, he changes the hot route from Beasley to Shady McCoy if 6 come, and you know what? They don't. And that's just putting your offense in the hands of your quarterback, but that's also the quarterback executing on a crucial down and distance. And
but Erik, the thing is too on this play is I think what he understands is the matchup, right? Like if you look to the left side, if they're bringing 6, where is your advantage? Advantage is to the left where you have a 2-on-1 with your tight end and your running back. On the right side, well covered, right? You're man on man. You're 3 guys up, 3 across the board. So instead of giving a hot route to that side where the defense at least has man coverage available to them, he says, no, I'm going to decide if they are going to blitz double A gap. Well, please do, because I'm going to have your defender, Dante Jackson, in this situation, essentially in a conflict of a 2-on-1, and you can't lose in that situation. So what he's doing is putting his team into winnable situations pre-snap. Oh, man, that is music, and it's got to be great to see if you're Brian Daboll. And here's the thing I love about Daboll. Daboll's not babying Josh Allen. He's going out there and saying, you better put us in the right play. That's your job to put us in the right play. It's not Brian Daboll's job to call the best possible play. It's your job to change it if it need be. And what I love about this is just the awareness pre-snap. He's not in a hurry. You can see a lot of guys ready trying to kick their foot. Hey, we got to hurry up. We got to get this snap in play. No, he's calculated. He does everything he needs to do within a 12-second period and gets the ball snapped before the clock hits.
Yeah, I mean, he took, a play that could have been really bad because, as you mentioned, if they do send all 6 of these guys, Nate, and we talked about, switching the hot route to McCoy. Well, if you got your seam player going right down there, obviously top down, Dante's got to protect deep, all right? Yep. But as you mentioned, well, then who's covering LaShawn McCoy? If all 6 are being sent, there's no one. So he understands that. As you mentioned, it's a matchup game. And even though this is zone coverage, understanding the spatial awareness of how the coverage is going to roll post snap and the way it does, as you mentioned, having this linebacker drop the flats and Dante slightly late on his deep third responsibilities down the seam. I mean, that's just insane understanding, and maybe something that I can't recall right now of a play where he had this last year. When I think about plays like this, I think about games like Green Bay where they were sending that second level blitzer and he didn't know who the hot route was. First of all, they didn't know who the hot route was, and that's something that he worked on with Daves after that Charger game and that Green Bay game. And then we started to see some progress in the Dolphins games where he hit Jason Kroom on that little whip route. But this is just good understanding of how the coverage is going to spin. If they did blitz here, that they have the advantageous numbers to the bottom of the screen, as you mentioned. And You talked about Allen's poise and patience in the pocket. We'll see it from this other angle and how he anticipates his throw. I mean, as you mentioned, dude, I mean, he's cool as a cucumber here, right? I mean, look, make sure that safety stays to the middle of the field deep, and then he's just standing in the pocket and delivering it to Sweeney, and we'll see it, again here. It's just a really nice, it's a perfect throw. And you said right here, look, the ball's out, head's not even snapped around by Sweeney here, right?
Yeah, it's a thing of beauty, man. And it leads him perfectly, keeps him safe away from that safety who's coming over the top. He waits. If that ball's out like a second later, there's a good chance that corner, that safety is coming over the top and depleting him as the ball reaches him. But because it's on time, he takes the safety right out of play.
All right, Nate, it was a good breakdown. We saw some really good plays from Josh Allen in the second game of the year. But let's kind of wrap it up by looking at what Daboll and the offense is doing with Josh Allen, what they're trying to accomplish. As we mentioned at the top, you see a lot of the passes in the short area, but you also see him attacking in the middle of the field. And, he's only thrown 3 passes deep. He's 1 for 3 with 23 yards. Not a bad percentage when you're talking about the grand scheme of throwing the ball down the field to those low percentage passes. But you see them trying to attack the short area of the field. As you mentioned, John Brown hasn't even really been out there, so he's going to affect some things. Robert Foster's going to affect some things once they start game planning. But what have you seen from Josh Allen? What other things maybe do you want to see this week against Detroit?
Yeah, what I'd like to see is a continuation of what we've seen all preseason, which is this dedication to getting as many reps in the short and intermediate passing game as possible. I'm also really looking forward to seeing John Brown's integration into the starting offense and getting them to see maybe, getting a drive, that first drive going into the third quarter after the kickoff, just to see how they respond after coming out of halftime and kind of having that script for the second half coming out. But the middle of the field to me is going to be really interesting how this plays out. And do they end up getting Dawson Knox or Jeremy Kroom or Jason Kroom back this week? Because if they can get one of those guys back, I'd like to see what a really athletic tight end does to change how defenses are going to try to stop the Bills. Because if you have a Dawson Knox in there, a 6'2", 6'3" guy who's got 4'5", 4'6" potential, you're really looking at what I think can be a really potent passing attack. So I don't think that they're really going to flash much on the deep stuff this upcoming week. I think they're going to continue to make an effort to show 1 or 2 techniques that you're seeing from Cole Beasley. You're not seeing a lot of different stuff. You're basically seeing the same play in different formations. So I mean, for week 1, I'm going to be most excited to see that expand and to see Cole Beasley's full route tree. I think we're seeing 1 or 2 routes from Beasley's route tree, and I'm not sure that you could really put a number on how many he's got in his repertoire.
Yeah, and even those routes, the defense knows it's coming. They've seen it, and he's
it.
still getting open. Okay, this is what I'm looking forward to. I love that they match up versus Detroit this week. Why? Matt Patricia, Page's, Belichick tree. And it's last year when they played Detroit, I think it was week 15, Patricia tried keeping Josh Allen in the pocket. And, there wasn't a lot of blitzes, but they tried making him play quarterback from the pocket, and he toasted them. This year, I want to see if Patricia takes a different stance and game plan versus Josh Allen. Is he going to blitz, Josh Allen in this third game? Because Allen's only seen 2 blitzes this entire preseason and 26 dropbacks. This is what worries me. I want to see Allen versus some pressure in his face. I want to see Allen without a clean pocket and have to manipulate the pocket a little more, not have such a clear, sight line to the middle of the field. What happens when that changes for him? I want to see him versus, that Patriots type defense and how they're going to game plan against Josh Allen this time versus last year, because I expect a slightly different approach from Patricia and even, the opponents this year that are going against Josh Allen. So I'm excited about that. I still think that Cole Beasley obviously is going to be a huge factor to Josh Allen, whether he's blitzed or not. So it's going to be fun to see, this third game, how long they play, and maybe even, as you mentioned, some of those other parts and pieces being thrown into the lineup now, because this is a dress rehearsal. They're not going to play much, if at all, in that fourth game. So they need to, obviously have a better script than the first 2 games, because they don't really script those, first, 10 plays or whatever. So the script will also play a part in this third game, because, as I mentioned, Josh Allen hasn't looked all that well to start off games. So let's see Daboll give him some easy reads, some good game planning plays to get Allen in the game quickly and early, so that he can set the tone instead of being on being reactive. He can be proactive. So with that said, Nate, thanks for joining me. Where can everyone find you on social media?
Yeah, man, at Nate Geary WGR up on Twitter. Looking forward to this game, and obviously looking forward to the finale of this preseason. I'm really excited to get this season started, and now with some of the injury issues and some of the issues that are happening in New York with Avery Williamson going down for the season, I'm really looking forward to that Week 1 matchup, and I think this upcoming week is really kind of that dress rehearsal for that. So I'm looking forward to it.
No, that's a great point. I'm glad you mentioned the Jets in week 1. Why? Greg Williams is their defensive coordinator,
Mm-hmm.
and you can be sure that he's going to blitz Josh Allen. With that said,
Oh, he
we're going to
certainly.
wrap up this Cover 1 Film Room edition. Thanks, and we'll see you next week.